More than half the women in my cabinet, more than half the people in my cabinet, more than half of the women in my administration are women. More than half the women in my cabinet, more than half the people in my cabinet, more than half of the women in my administration are women.
As Joe Biden faces the fallout of his piss-poor handling of the Chinese spy balloon, the efforts to rewrite history are fully underway. Soon after the balloon was shot down on Saturday, Biden claimed the order to shoot it down was given on Wednesday. Quote, "I ordered the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible," Biden told reporters. Quote, "They decided, without doing any damage to people on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was when it got over water, outside within a 12-mile limit," unquote. He once again emphasized, quote, "I told them to shoot it down on Wednesday," he added, clearly wanting to make sure that this newly created fact wasn't missed. Quote, "They said to me, let's wait for the safest place to do it," unquote. But is this statement really true? Did Biden really authorize the balloon to be shot down on Wednesday? Well, I have my doubts. I'm sure you have yours too. The Biden administration has long pointed to the size of the balloon's payload and the potential debris field shooting it down over land might cause. But when the Pentagon spokesperson, Air Force Brigadier General Patrick Ryder, was asked on Friday if they were planning to shoot it down once it was over water, he didn't really rule it out, but it sure sounded like no decision had been made at that point. Quote, "And once it's over a body of water, will you shoot it down?" a reporter asked. Quote, "Again, right now, we're monitoring the situation closely, reviewing options," Ryder replied. Quote, "But beyond that, I'm not going to have any additional information," unquote. The other problem with this story is that we know the Pentagon had been monitoring the balloon since it left China, and they had previous opportunities to shoot it down while it was over U.S. territorial water, when it crossed over the Aleutian Islands. Bottom line, the Biden administration most certainly knew what it was and where it meant to go, and the opportunity to shoot it down safely over the water was not taken. So when did Biden actually authorize the spy balloon to be shot down? As if he authorizes anything in this administration. But I digress. The most likely story is that the decision to shoot down the balloon once it was back over the water was made on Friday morning, shortly before Secretary of State Antony Blinken's planned trip to Beijing was postponed. You see, it's highly unlikely that the Biden administration would have planned to send Blinken to Beijing while they'd been planning to shoot down the balloon. So yeah, considering the administration had long known about the balloon, the abrupt change in Blinken's plans is the most obvious signal that there'd been a change in how the administration would handle the situation. So Biden's story doesn't add up, yet he'll forever claim he'd authorized the spy balloon to be shot down on Wednesday. Just like he'll forever claim that he really didn't take showers with his own daughter. Sorry about that, folks. Sometimes you just can't help yourself, you know? So anyways, the facts suggest that authorization was 2 days later. Naturally, to help spin the situation as a positive for the Biden administration, Democrats are now celebrating the balloon's destruction, as if Biden's actions were heroic and decisive when we really know they weren't. Well, wouldn't you know it? Now it seems in reaction to the criticism of Biden from those on the right, there's a report from an unnamed, I'm making quotation marks with my fingers again, Pentagon official who claims that 3 balloons made it into U.S. airspace during the Trump years. And to be fair here, there's also a report of another one entering during Biden's time, but none of those were comparable for how long this balloon was over the United States. And of course, those claims are being seriously shot down by the Trump team, including President Donald Trump and multiple Trump officials. Trump's Secretary of Defense Mark Esper says he was seriously surprised by such a report. He said he was never told about a Chinese spy balloon when he was secretary between July 2019 and November 2020. Quote, "I don't ever recall somebody coming into my office or reading anything that the Chinese had a surveillance balloon above the United States. I would remember that sort of thing," Esper said. For hell's sakes, even former National Secretary Advisor John Bolton, who would sell Trump down the river in a red-hot minute if he could, said it didn't happen. He had never heard of any such thing under his tenure. Quote, "I don't know of any balloon flights by any power over the United States during my tenure, and I'd never heard of any of that occurring before I joined. In 2018, Bolton said, quote, "I haven't heard of anything that occurred after I left either," unquote. Bolton even went so far as to say that if the Biden administration has, quote, "specific examples, they need to tell Congress," unquote. And of course, Trump obliterated the rumor completely and hit back at the Biden team for disinformation. Quote, "This never happened. It would have never happened," Trump told Fox News Digital on Sunday morning, adding that Beijing, quote, "respected us greatly under his leadership." Quote, "It's never happened with us under the Trump administration, and if it did, we would have shot it down immediately. It's disinformation," unquote. Trump said the Biden administration is spreading this because, quote, "they look so bad, as usual," unquote. "They are incompetent," he added. If this is seriously being put out there just to try and cover up for good old Joe, not only is that shameful, but once again it shows more problems in departments and agencies that should be objective, not just places like the FBI, but the Pentagon as well. Moreover, and lastly, and once again, if this had happened under Trump, I'm betting it would have been leaked long before now to attack him for being even a little bit weak on the subject. As somebody said somewhere over the weekend, that balloon would have caught him a third impeachment. But like with everything else these idiots get caught red-handed involved in or with, now we're back to the, quote, "unnamed sources" trying to smear Trump to help cover up more Biden administration bullshit. And in the meantime, we look like even bigger douchebags to the rest of the, let's say, undoctrinated world. You know, those countries that are actually dangerous. People like Vladimir Putin, well, they're laughing their asses off right now. And you know what? I don't blame him a damn bit.
Of airspace, which is itself a kind of border. So maintaining control of the skies over the United States, deciding who comes in and out and on what terms, that's one of the most basic duties of the Pentagon and has been since aviation began. If you were to fly your Cessna into restricted airspace in parts of this country, the U.S. military would scramble jets and they might shoot you down. So it's not a small infraction. Unless, of course, you happen to be the Chinese government and you're operating an enormous white dirigible designed to spy on American nuclear installations. In that case, you could relax. You've got friends at the White House. Absolutely nothing is going to happen to you. Now, that's not an imaginary scenario. We're not guessing. We know it's true because we're seeing it right now. As you've doubtless heard, an enormous spy balloon the size of several school buses has floated over from central China. It's currently, we think, drifting across the continental United States. Yesterday, it passed over Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. That's one of only 3 places in this country that houses Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles. By this afternoon, the Chinese spy balloon had made it to Kansas City. And there, over the skies of that city, a pilot flying a private plane at 47,000 feet came close to hitting the Chinese spy balloon. "Derelict balloon adrift," he said, in a notice to other nearby pilots. But it was not a derelict balloon. It was a balloon being controlled by China. In other words, here we have a foreign military aircraft over our country spying on our critical defense installations and posing a threat to civilian aviation. That seems like a big deal. If you want to know how big a deal, consider how would we respond if Putin were doing this? If this were a Russian spy balloon? Well, you'd have the world's shortest news story. Russian spy balloon spotted offshore. Entire U.S. Air Force mobilized. Balloon reduced to vapor in seconds. So no, there would not be a lot of debate about what to do about a Russian spy balloon. We'd kill it instantly, as you would any hostile foreign intrusion. But things turn out to be a little different when it's a Chinese spy balloon. As far as we know, Vladimir Putin has never sent cash to Joe Biden's crackhead son. He probably should have. That would have been a very wise investment in retrospect. The Chinese government, long thinking as always, did send cash to Joe Biden's crackhead son, and apparently to Joe Biden himself. And that paid off. Watch some robot from the Pentagon tell you that you have no right to know anything about this Chinese spy balloon. You think you're a citizen or something? Here it is.
Position of the balloon classified?
Phil, right now, what we're not going to do is get into a hour-by-hour location of the balloon. Again, we're monitoring it closely. As I mentioned, right now, it's over the center of the continental United States. That's about as specific as I'm going to get.
But I understand it might be inconvenient, but does the public not have a right to know if a balloon
the public
is over their
certainly
state?
has the ability to look up in the sky and see where the balloon is.
The public has the right to look at the sky. Go stare at the sun. That's what the guy just said. What you didn't hear was a lecture about how the Chinese military is a threat to our democracy and our American way of life. It's not like the Chinese invaded Ukraine. No, just our country. So no big deal. Stop asking questions. Joe Biden, of course, took that very same position today. Watch.
Remember what the economy was like when I got here? Jobs were hemorrhaging. Inflation was rising. We weren't manufacturing a damn thing here. We were in real economic difficulty. That's why I don't. Thank you.
Mr. President, when and how will you remove the balloon? When and how will you remove the balloon, Mr. President?
Notice the calm smiles. Walk this way, Mr. President. They knew they weren't going to answer questions on that. And it raises a much bigger question, which is why? What's going on here? What else do they know but refuse to tell us?
Most of this came by way of PJ Media. If you liked it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everyone for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.
More than half the women in my cabinet, more than half the people in my cabinet, more than half of the women in my administration are women.